Sheriff Cal Bowen, drowned pulling a mother and her son from a flood. His will named one person to give the eulogy, the woman he had jailed for 286 days, and she was not allowed to read his letter first. On a Thursday morning in June, the state of Tennessee lowered its flags for Sheriff Calvin Bowen. He had died in the water on Heron Creek Road, pulling a woman and her son out of a car that the flood had lifted off the pavement and turned around backward. He got them both to the bank. He did not get himself there. He was 68 years old. He had worn a badge in Caney County for 41 years, 23 of them as sheriff. The governor came to the funeral. 7 television cameras came to the funeral. 1,100 people came to the funeral. The instruction was written in his own hand, on the last page of the will, above his signature. Ozella Teague was to give the eulogy, and the sealed envelope was not to be opened until she stood at the pulpit. Ozella Teague was 71 years old. She had known Cal Bowen for exactly one reason. In February of 1994, he had put her in a cell, and she had stayed there for 286 days. The rain that week was the kind old people in Caney County still talk about. 11 inches in 19 hours across the northern half of the county, on ground that had already taken 4 inches the week before. Heron Creek is ordinarily a place where children hunt crawdads. On the night of June 9th, it took out 140 feet of county road, 2 barns, and the low bridge at Sutter's Crossing that had stood since 1961. Cal Bowen was not supposed to be out there. He was the sheriff. He had 31 deputies and a dispatch center and a written emergency plan that he had signed himself, and that plan said the sheriff coordinates from the command post. He heard the call go out at 20 minutes before 11 at night, a vehicle in the water on Heron Creek Road with occupants inside, and he was 4 minutes closer than anyone else, and he went. The woman in the car was named Raina Osborne. She was 34. Her son Bryce was 15. They had been coming back from a ball game in Pikeville and had taken the road they always took. Cal Bowen got the boy out first, then went back for the mother. He got her to the bank on the north side, into the hands of a volunteer firefighter named Dewey Kell, who had arrived 90 seconds behind him. Then the water took the car, and the car took the tree it had been resting against, and the whole of it came around in a way nobody could have predicted, and Cal Bowen went under and did not come up. They found him at daylight, 2/3 of a mile downstream. Raina Osborne and her son were at the funeral. She sat in the second row with the family. She has never given an interview, and she has asked, politely and consistently, that people stop calling her. That is the man they buried. That is the entire difficulty of this story, and there is no way around it, and anyone who tries to tell you it is simple is telling you something else. Harlan Pruitt had been Cal Bowen's lawyer for 26 years. He was 74. He practiced out of a converted dentist's office on the square in Beckwith, and he had drawn the will in 2019 and revised it twice. The instruction about the eulogy was added in the second revision, in November of 2023. Pruitt had argued with him about it. He said so afterward, plainly, because Pruitt was the kind of small-town lawyer who does not see the point in being clever after the fact. I told him it was not a proper use of a will, Pruitt said. I told him a will disposes of property. I told him you cannot compel a woman to speak at your funeral. And he said, I'm not compelling her. I'm asking her. If she says no, that's an answer too, and it'll be the right one. Pruitt asked him what was in the envelope. Cal Bowen said, something I owe. Pruitt asked him why he did not simply mail it, and Cal Bowen, a man who had been elected 6 times, who had spoken at 200 funerals, who could stand in front of a county commission and hold a room, sat in that converted dentist's office and did not answer the question. He changed the subject. He asked about Pruitt's wife's knee. Pruitt let it go, the way you let things go with a friend, and 18 months later he was standing in a kitchen on Fairlane Street with an envelope in his hand and no idea what was in it. To understand what happened in that kitchen, you have to go back 31 years and understand what Ozella Teague was before. She was 40 years old in the winter of 1994. She had been widowed for 3 years. Her husband Emmanuel had died at 44 of a heart attack in the parking lot of the feed store on a Tuesday with no warning at all. He had been a good man and an ordinary one, and there had been no insurance to speak of. So Ozella did what people do. She drove a school bus for Caney County Schools, Route 6, out toward Cordell Ridge, which paid poorly but which let her be home when her children were. She cleaned 2 houses on Saturdays, and she served as treasurer of the building fund at Mount Nebo Missionary Baptist Church, which paid nothing at all, and which she considered the most important thing she did. She had 2 children. Denise was 14, Marcus was 9, and in September of 1992, she had enrolled in a ministerial studies program through a Bible college in Chattanooga, taking 2 courses a term, driving over on Saturday evenings after she finished the houses. She was in her 2nd year. She had 4 years to go. Everyone at Mount Nebo knew where she was headed, and most of them had known it before she did. The building fund had a little over $41,000 in it. It had taken the congregation 9 years to raise. It was going toward a fellowship hall. On the 3rd of February, 1994, Ozella made a deposit of $3,200, the proceeds of a fish fry, a dinner sale, and 2 months of building fund envelopes. She filled out the deposit slip. She got a receipt. She wrote it in the ledger. She put the receipt in the accordion folder she kept in the hall closet, where she had put every receipt for 4 years. The bank posted it to the wrong account. That is the whole of it. That is the entire crime. A teller at Caney County Farmers and Merchants transposed 2 digits in an account number on a Thursday afternoon in February, and $3,200 went into a dormant account belonging to a Kiwanis chapter that had disbanded in 1989. The following Monday, the church's monthly statement did not match Ozella's ledger. She called the bank. She was told someone would look into it. On the 8th of February, a deacon named Purvis Adkins, 66 years old, well-meaning, and frightened of anything to do with money, called the sheriff's office. Deputy Calvin Bowen was 37 years old and had been an investigator for 2 years. He was, by every account, an energetic officer. He cleared cases. He was well thought of. He had a wife named Lorna and 2 boys under 12, and he was on a list of 4 names being considered for a sergeant slot that was expected to open that fall. He caught the church case on the 9th of February. He interviewed Purvis Adkins. He interviewed the pastor. He obtained the church's statements. He did not, at any point in those first days, interview Ozella Teague, though she had called the bank herself and had a folder full of receipts sitting in her hall closet, 11 minutes from his desk. He applied for a warrant on the 14th. The affidavit ran 2.5 pages. It described a discrepancy of $3,200 in a church building fund and a treasurer with sole signature authority. It did not mention that the treasurer had reported the discrepancy herself. A magistrate signed it that afternoon. They arrested her on the morning of February 15th at the bus barn at 20 minutes past 6 in the morning in front of 9 other drivers and about 40 children who were already loaded onto 3 buses on the far side of the lot. Ozella Teague has been asked about that morning, perhaps 100 times over the years, by lawyers and reporters and, once, by a graduate student writing a thesis. She answers the same way every time, in the same flat voice. "I asked them if I could park my bus first," she says. "That's what I remember asking. I had it running. I didn't want it running with nobody in it." Bond was set at $50,000. That meant $5,000 in cash to a bondsman. Ozella Teague had $410 in a savings account and a 1986 Buick with a bad transmission. She was still there in November. Here is the fact on which this entire story turns, and it is a small one, and it took 31 years to come into daylight. On the 2nd of March, 1994, 15 days after the arrest, a woman named Wilma Dukes picked up the telephone at Caney County Farmers and Merchants Bank and called the sheriff's office. Wilma Dukes was the operations manager. She was 57 years old. She had spent 3 weeks running down the discrepancy because it was her job, and she had found it. A posting error on the 3rd of February, teller station 2, an account number with 2 digits reversed. The money had never left the bank. It was sitting in a dormant Kiwanis account, all $3,200 of it, where it had been the whole time. She asked for the investigator on the church case. She was put through to Deputy Bowen. She told him what she had found. She told him she would put it in writing and send it over that same afternoon, on bank letterhead, with the posting record attached. And Deputy Calvin Bowen said, and this is his own account of it, in his own handwriting, 31 years later, that won't be necessary. I'll take care of it from here. Wilma Dukes hung up the phone and made a note in her desk calendar, because she was the sort of person who made notes, and she went back to work. The letter was never sent. The call was never logged. It never entered the file. The district attorney, a man named Elmore Diltz, who has since passed away, never knew it happened. Ozella's public defender never knew it happened. The court never knew it happened. For 271 more days, the only 2 people on earth who knew that the case against Ozella Teague was finished were a bank operations manager who assumed it had been handled and the deputy who had told her it would be. The sergeant's board convened on the 12th of September, 1994. There were 4 names. Calvin Bowen's clearance numbers for the year were the strongest of the 4, and the church embezzlement case was in the packet, listed as pending prosecution. He got the promotion. He was still a sergeant 6 weeks later, in late October, when a public defender named Karen Lipscomb finally got around to subpoenaing the bank's records herself. Karen Lipscomb was 28 years old that fall and carrying 141 active cases. She has spoken about this exactly once, at a Bar Association panel in 2019, before any of this came out, when she was asked to describe the worst professional failure of her career. She said she had believed the file. She said the file said there was money missing from a church, and she had a woman who could not make bond and who kept telling her about a folder in a hall closet, and she had 140 other clients, and she had scheduled the bank subpoena for October because October was when she got to it. She said, I want to be careful here. I was overloaded and underfunded, and that's all true, but I want to say the other thing too, because I've had 25 years to think about it. I did not push. And I have asked myself many times whether I would have pushed harder for a different client, and the honest answer is that I do not know, and that the not knowing is its own answer. The bank produced the posting record in 9 days. The case was dismissed on the 28th of November, 1994. Ozella Teague walked out of the Caney County Jail at 4:15 in the afternoon into a temperature of 38 degrees, wearing the clothes she had been arrested in, which no longer fit her. Nobody from the sheriff's office was there. Her sister Roberta was there, with the children in the car. People hear 286 days, and they hear a length of time. It is worth being specific about what it actually took. She lost her job. School bus drivers hold a state certification, and an arrest suspends it, and a dismissal does not automatically restore it. Restoration required a hearing before a state board, and the hearing required an attorney, and she did not have one. She never drove a school bus again. She lost custody. Not permanently, and not by any court's malice. The children went to Roberta in February, because there was nowhere else for them to go. And when Ozella came home in November, Denise was 15 and had been running a household for 9 months, and Marcus was 10 and had stopped talking about it entirely. Denise did not move back. She finished high school at her aunt's. She has said, as an adult, that this was her own decision and that her mother never once fought her on it, and that she has spent a great deal of her adult life wondering whether she wanted to be fought for. Ozella lost the ministerial program. She had 4 years to go, and no money and no car that ran, and by the time she could think about it again, it had been 6 years, and the program had changed, and she had to start over. She was ordained in 2006. She was 52 years old. It had taken her 14 years. She lost the building fund, in a sense that has nothing to do with money. The money was there the whole time. But the fellowship hall did not get built until 2001, because after February of 1994, the congregation could not seem to raise anything, and nobody ever said out loud why. And she did not get her record cleared. That is the part that people find hardest to believe, and it is the most ordinary part of all. A dismissal is not an expungement. The arrest stays. The charge stays. It stays in the state repository, and it stays in the county index, and it comes up on a background check with the word dismissed beside it, which most people who run background checks do not read carefully, and which some of them read as got off. To clear it, she needed to file a petition, pay a fee, and appear before a judge. In 1995, the fee was $150, which she did not have. By the time she had it, she had been told twice by people who ought to have known better that it was probably not worth the trouble. She applied for 11 jobs between 1995 and 1998 and got 3. In 2013, at the age of 59, she was asked to step down from a volunteer position at a county youth program after a routine background screening by a young administrator who was extremely apologetic and who explained that his hands were tied. She stepped down. She did not argue. She had learned by then what arguing cost. Cal Bowen was elected sheriff of Caney County in 2002. He was, by the standards anyone actually applies to such men, good at it. He integrated the department, which had 2 black deputies when he took over and 11 when he died. He shut down a jail commissary arrangement that had been quietly enriching 2 people for a decade. He started a program that put deputies in schools to teach a water safety class, of all things, which by 2025 had reached about 9,000 children. In 2015, he stood in front of the county commission and said that the department's policy on pretrial detention for nonviolent property offenses was, in his words, a machine for punishing people who don't have $5,000. He pushed for a pretrial release program. It passed. It is still running. He never said why. Ozella Teague saw him, over those 31 years, perhaps a dozen times. Caney County has 9,000 people. You cannot avoid a man in a county that size. She saw him at the hardware store in 2004. She saw him at a 4th of July thing on the square in 2009. She saw him at the funeral of a woman they had both known in 2016, where he was 3 rows behind her, and neither of them turned around. He never spoke to her, not once in 31 years. She has been asked what she would have done if he had. I don't know, she says. I've thought about that more than I've thought about the jail, and I still don't know. I think for the first 10 years I'd have said something I'd have had to answer for. After that, I think I'd have just kept walking. She is asked whether she hated him. She takes her time with that one. For a while, she says, hate is a young woman's arrangement. It takes a lot of feeding. I got tired. Lorna Bowen was 66 years old and had been married to Cal for 44 years. She did not know. That is the thing about this story that people argue over the most, and there is no way to prove it either direction, and everyone who knew Lorna Bowen believes her. She had known there was a case, once, a long time ago, involving a church. She had known her husband did not like to talk about the mid-90s. She had assumed, in the vague way spouses assume things, that it was one of the cases that had gone badly in some technical fashion, of which every officer has a few. Harlan Pruitt read the will to the family on the Monday after the flood, in the front room of the house on Winesap Road, with both sons present and the grandchildren sent outside. When he got to the instruction about the eulogy, Lorna Bowen said, "Who?" Pruitt read the name again. Their older son, Dale, 42, said, "Dad wanted a stranger to give the eulogy?" And Pruitt, who had been carrying this for 18 months and had run out of ways to carry it, said, "I don't believe she's a stranger." It took Lorna Bowen about 90 minutes to find out who Ozella Teague was, because in a town of that size it takes about 90 minutes to find out anything, and because a woman named Pauline Adkins, Purvis Adkins's daughter-in-law, answered her telephone and told her the truth in one sentence. Lorna Bowen sat in her own front room for 3 hours. Then she got in the car with the sealed envelope in her purse and drove 40 minutes to a small brick house on Fairlane Street. Ozella Teague opened the door and knew who she was immediately. Everyone in the county knew what Lorna Bowen looked like. Her picture had been in the paper 4 days running. Neither woman said anything for a moment. Then Ozella Teague stood back from the door and said, "You'd better come in. It's 91 degrees." They sat at the kitchen table. Ozella poured 2 glasses of tea because that is what you do, and Lorna Bowen did not touch hers. "I'm going to say all of it at once," Lorna said, "because if I stop, I won't start again." "All right. My husband's will names you to give his eulogy. It says you're not to read this beforehand." She put the envelope on the table between them. "I did not know about you until 3 hours ago. I want you to know I'm not saying that to make you feel sorry for me. I'm saying it because I want you to understand that I have not had 31 years to get ready for this conversation, and you have." Ozella Teague looked at the envelope. "Do you know what's in it?" "No. Do you want to?" Lorna Bowen was quiet for a while. "Yes," she said, "and no. And I've decided the answer is that it isn't mine." She pushed it 2 inches across the table. "Here's where I am," she said. "The funeral is Thursday. There will be 1,100 people and the governor and every camera in 3 counties. My grandsons are 9 and 12, and they think their grandfather is the finest man who ever lived. And last week he was. And this week I don't know what he was. And I won't know until Thursday, same as everybody else. Mrs. Bowen, let me finish, because this next part is the ugly part, and I want to say it out loud so I can't pretend later that I didn't." She put both hands flat on the table. "If you stand up there Thursday and read what's in that envelope, you will end 31 years of a man's life in front of his family and his county, and it will be on television by 6 o'clock. And if you don't read it, if you get up there and say something kind, or say nothing at all, then you will have stood in a church and let it go, and whatever he did to you will stay done." She looked up. "I don't have any business asking you for either one. I know that. My husband put this on you, and I have just driven 40 minutes to put it on you a second time, and I knew that before I got in the car, and I came anyway." Ozella Teague did not move. "Why did you come then?" And Lorna Bowen said, "Because if I'd mailed it, I'd have been doing exactly what he did, and I have been sitting in my house since Monday trying to work out how a person gets to be like that, and the only thing I've come up with is that it starts with not driving over." Denise Teague Whitlock is 45 years old. She is a charge nurse in a cardiac unit in Nashville. She has 2 children of her own. She drove down on Tuesday. She sat in the same kitchen chair Lorna Bowen had sat in and told her mother not to do it. "Not out of mercy," she said. "Let's be clear about that. I don't have any for him." "Then why?" "Because they will make you the villain of it, Mama. That is what will happen. You stand up in that church and tell the truth, and every story about it will be about the woman who ruined a hero's funeral. And you will be 71 years old, and you will be that woman for the rest of your life. And I have already watched you be one thing for the rest of your life, and I am not doing it twice." Ozella listened to that all the way through. Then she said, "You were 15. Don't. You were 15 and you got your brother to school 286 mornings, and nobody ever thanked you for it, including me. And I have known that for 31 years and never found a way to say it that wasn't an excuse." Denise Teague Whitlock put her hand over her eyes. "I'm saying it now," her mother said, badly, in a kitchen, "but I'm saying it." They sat there a while. "I still don't want you to do it," Denise said. "I know. Are you going to?" "I don't know yet," said Ozella Teague. "I have not opened it. There was one more thing Ozella did before Thursday, and she did it on Wednesday morning, and she did it alone. She drove to an assisted living facility in Dunlap and asked to see a resident named Wilma Dukes. Wilma Dukes was 88. She used a walker, and she was sharp as a tack about 1994, and considerably less sharp about last Tuesday, which is how it goes. Ozella introduced herself. Wilma Dukes said, The church deposit. Yes, ma'am. Teller 2. February 3rd. 2 digits reversed. The old woman's hands moved on the arms of her chair. I ran that down in 3 weeks. 3 weeks, and I had 400 accounts and no computer worth the name. Ma'am, can I ask you something? You want to know if I called? Yes. I called, said Wilma Dukes. March the 2nd. I've still got the calendar. My daughter's got it, in a box. She looked out the window. I told that deputy I'd send it over on letterhead that afternoon, and he said don't bother, he'd handle it. And I said all right. Her jaw moved. And I went to lunch. She turned back. I read in the paper you were in there till November. Yes, ma'am. I didn't know that, said Wilma Dukes. I want you to hear me say I didn't know that. I thought it was over in March. I thought I fixed it. Ozella Teague reached over and took the old woman's hand. You did fix it, she said. You fixed it in 3 weeks. Somebody else unfixed it. She opened the envelope at 11 o'clock at night, at her kitchen table, alone, with the window unit running. It was 4 pages, handwritten, in blue ink, on the ruled paper of a legal pad. She read it 3 times. The first page said what he had done. It was specific. It gave the date of Wilma Dukes's call and what she had told him and what he had said back. It gave the date of the sergeant's board. It stated plainly that he had kept the call out of the file and that he had known within 15 days of the arrest that there was nothing there. The second page gave his reasons, and it gave them in the order he had come to understand them, which he said had taken about 20 years. The first reason was the promotion, and he wrote that he had believed for a long time this was the whole of it, and that this had been a comfortable thing to believe, because a man can serve out a sentence for ambition. The second reason he wrote out slowly, in a hand that got smaller. He wrote that by the time Wilma Dukes called, he had already told the newspaper it was a church embezzlement. He had already told his lieutenant. He had already said it out loud in the break room and at his own supper table. He had already decided what kind of woman she was, and he wrote, and this is the sentence that Ozella Teague read a great many times, I needed her to have done something, because if she had not done something, then I had. And then, 4 lines down, without softening it, he wrote this. I want to be plain, because I have spent 31 years being unplain. I did not build that picture of her out of nothing. I built it out of what I had been handed about people like her since I was a boy, and I had never once in my life taken it out and looked at it. She was not a suspect I got wrong. She was a conclusion I already had, and she walked into it. The third page was about what he had done since, and it was the shortest, and he was hard on himself in it in a way that Ozella found she did not entirely trust and did not entirely dismiss. He listed the pretrial release program, he listed the school program, and then he wrote, I want to be careful not to hand you a ledger. A man does not get to run a program for 20 years and call it square. Those things were good, and I did them, and they are not payment. The fourth page was the request. He wrote, I am asking you to give the eulogy because it is the only room I will ever have where you have the floor, and I do not. I know what I am doing. I am handing you a loaded thing, and I am not going to be there when it goes off. I have had 31 years to walk up your steps and knock on your door, and I never found the day, and I have run out of days, and this is what a coward does with the last of them. This is not repentance. Repentance would have been the 2nd of March, 1994, and I did not do it, and there is no version of this where I get that back. It is only the last place I have left to hide, and I am telling you that so that you cannot be tricked into thinking better of me than I have earned. Do whatever you want with it. It is yours. It has been yours for 31 years, and I have been holding it. Signed, C.B. Ozella Teague folded the 4 pages and put them back in the envelope. Then she sat at her kitchen table until 3:45 in the morning. She has never told anyone what she thought about during those 5 hours. She was asked once, and she said, "That's between me and the Lord," and it took most of the night. Mount Nebo Missionary Baptist Church seats 400. They put 1,100 people in and around it. There were speakers on the lawn. There were deputies from 9 counties in dress uniform filling the first 3 rows on the left. The governor sat in the second row on the right. There is a detail people always ask about, and the answer is yes. The funeral was held at Ozella Teague's church. Cal Bowen had specified it. Nobody knew why until that week. Reverend Dr. Anthony Sledge gave the invocation. A nephew read scripture. A deputy named Marlon Ivy, who had been trained by Cal Bowen in 2006, spoke for 8 minutes and could not finish the last of it. Raina Osborne did not speak. She had asked not to. Then Reverend Ozella Teague walked up to the pulpit of her own church in a black suit, 71 years old, and set 2 things on the lectern in front of her. One was the envelope. The other was a single sheet of paper she had written out longhand at 3:45 that morning. She did not look down at either one. "My name is Ozella Teague," she said. "Most of you know me. Some of you have known me a long time, and some of you have known me and crossed the street, and I have not kept a list." The room got very still. I knew Calvin Bowen for one reason. In February of 1994, he arrested me for taking money out of the building fund of this church. I did not take it. The bank had put it in the wrong account. On the 2nd of March, 15 days after they arrested me, a woman named Wilma Dukes called Deputy Bowen at the sheriff's office and told him she had found the error and offered to send it over in writing that afternoon. She let that sit exactly as long as it needed to. He told her that would not be necessary. Somewhere in the middle of the church, someone made a sound. It never went in the file. Not to the district attorney, not to my lawyer, not to the court. I stayed in the Caney County Jail 286 days. I lost my job driving the bus for your children. My daughter raised my son. I finished my ordination 8 years late. Her voice did not change at all. The charge was dismissed in November of 1994. It has been on my record for 31 years. She put her hand flat on the envelope. Sheriff Bowen wrote all of that down himself, in his own hand. He left it to me sealed and asked me to stand up here without reading it first, and I read it last night, and everything I have just told you is in it, and more that I am not going to say. He asked me to do this because it was the only room he was ever going to give me where he could not talk back. She looked out at 1,100 people. Now, here is what I have decided, and I decided it about 4 o'clock this morning. She picked up the single sheet of paper and did not read from it. I am not going to stand in the house of God and tell you Cal Bowen was a wicked man, because he was not, and everybody in this building who was on Heron Creek Road last Monday night knows it. He went into that water for a woman and a boy he had never met, and he got them out, and it cost him everything he had. That is true. What I just told you is also true. Both of those are true at the same time, and I am too old to pretend that is a contradiction. It is just what people are. She paused. And I am not going to stand up here and tell you I forgive him, because I have not settled that, and I am not going to lie about it in front of the governor and 7 cameras to make anybody's Thursday easier. That is between me and the Lord, and it is not finished. Then she set the paper down. So I am going to do the third thing. Cal Bowen said in that letter that he was handing me the only room where I would have the floor. All right, I have it. I am not going to use it on a dead man. I am going to use it on the one piece of this that is still alive. She looked directly at the 3rd row on the right. District Attorney Renfro is sitting right there. He has been sitting there for 20 minutes. Mr. Renfro, I was arrested in this county on February the 15th, 1994, and the charge was dismissed on November the 28th, 1994. And that arrest is still in the state repository, and it is still in the county index. And in 2013, it cost me a volunteer position working with children. I have never had the money, and I have never had the nerve, and I have been told twice by people who ought to have known better that it wasn't worth the trouble. I am asking you, in front of these 1,100 people, to file the petition to expunge it. Not for me alone. Sheriff Bowen's own pretrial program has cleared 400 people through that courthouse in 10 years, and every one of them has an arrest sitting on their record with the word dismissed beside it, and most of them do not have a room like this one. That is what I want. That is the whole of it. I do not want his name off the road signs. I do not want anybody's pension. I want the paper fixed." She stepped back from the lectern. "That is my eulogy. He asked me for one, and he did not tell me what kind, and this is the kind I had. There is film of what happened next. It has been viewed a great many times, and it is 9 seconds long and nothing much occurs in it." Lorna Bowen stood up. She was in the front row on the right, in black, with a grandson on either side of her, and she stood up and turned around so that she was facing the congregation and not the pulpit. She did not have a microphone. People 3 rows back could barely hear her, and she had to say it twice. What she said was, "I'll sign whatever needs signing." Then she sat back down and took her younger grandson's hand and faced forward, and the service went on, and the choir sang what they had been going to sing. District Attorney Wendell Renfro did not stand up and did not say anything, and a certain number of people held that against him at the time. He filed the petition 11 days later. The order clearing the arrest of Ozella Teague was signed in March of the following year. It took 9 months. She has pointed this out exactly once, in private, to her daughter, and she has never made anything of it in public. The hearing lasted 6 minutes. Karen Lipscomb, who is 59 now and has her own practice in Chattanooga, drove down and sat in the gallery and did not speak, because there was nothing for her to do and she came anyway. Afterward, Ozella Teague went out onto the courthouse steps in Beckwith, and a reporter asked her how it felt. She said, "It feels like a piece of paper." The reporter waited for more. "That's not me being bitter," she said. "It is a piece of paper. It was always a piece of paper. That's what I've been trying to tell people for 31 years. The county commission took up a broader measure that spring. It provides for the county to file expungement petitions on behalf of anyone whose charges were dismissed or who was acquitted, at no cost, without the person having to ask. It passed 9-2. It is not named after anybody. Ozella Teague asked that it not be, and she asked twice, and the second time she was not gentle about it. The first year it moved 1,160 records. Denise Teague Whitlock has said she was wrong. She says it the way people say such things when they are 45 and their mother is 71 and there is not as much time as there used to be. "I thought they'd make her the villain," she said. "I was so sure, I had it all worked out." She shakes her head, and she stood up there and didn't give them anywhere to put it. She said he was a good man, and she said what he did, in the same breath, and she didn't ask anybody to choose. There was nothing for them to argue about. She took the whole fight away. She was asked whether her mother forgave him. "I don't know," Denise said. "I asked her once, that Christmas. She said, 'I'm working on it, and it's slow, and I don't intend to lie about the pace.'" Lorna Bowen and Ozella Teague are not friends. That has been reported a few times, and it is not accurate, and both women have said so, and both of them have been mildly irritated about it. What is true is that they have had lunch 4 times. The first was in October, at a meet and 3 in Beckwith, and by all accounts it was hard going. The second was better. By the fourth, according to Lorna, they had gotten most of the way through the fact that neither of them had chosen any of this, and both of them had been handed it by the same man. Lorna Bowen still keeps his photograph on the mantle. She has been asked about that. "He was my husband for 44 years, she says. "He did a wicked thing in 1994, and he hid it for 31 years, and he was a coward about it to the last week of his life. He also went into that water. I'm not taking his picture down, and I'm not taking any of the rest of it back. People are going to have to hold both, same as I do." Ozella said that from the pulpit before I ever figured out how to say it, and I have been leaning on her sentence ever since. She was asked, once, what she thought Cal had wanted. She thought about it for a while. "I think he wanted her to burn it all down," Lorna said. "I think that's what he was asking for. I think he'd built it up in his mind that if she took everything from him in front of everybody, it'd be settled, and he wouldn't have to have died owing it. She looked out the window of her house on Winesap Road. And she wouldn't do it. That's the part he never counted on. She stood up there and she wouldn't do it. And she went and got the one thing that could still be fixed instead. She shook her head slowly. He didn't understand her at all. Not in 1994, and not in that letter. He spent 31 years being afraid of a woman who was never going to do it. Reverend Ozella Teague still preaches at Mount Nebo 2 Sundays a month. She is 72 now. She keeps the 4 pages in the accordion folder in the hall closet, in the same folder where the deposit receipts were, which she has never emptied. She does not read the letter. She has read it 3 times, all of them in one night, and she says that was enough. She was asked, at a small church conference in Knoxville, what she would tell somebody who was carrying something like hers. She said she had gotten several answers ready over the years and had thrown all of them out, and that the only one she still had was not very good. Everybody wants the apology, she said. I wanted it for 31 years. I got one, in writing, 4 pages, from a man who admitted every bit of it in his own hand. She let that sit. And I want to tell you the truth about it, because I don't think anybody tells the truth about this part. It did not give me back one day. Not one. Not February, not November, not my bus route, not my daughter at 15. The apology is for him. That's all it ever was. He needed it and he got it, and I hope it did him some good, and I mean that. But when I stood up in front of 1,100 people with that letter in my hand, I could either spend that room on a man who was past reaching, or I could spend it on the piece of paper that was still following me around. I want you to hear the difference, because it took me a whole night at a kitchen table to find it. Do not spend it on the apology. Spend it on the thing that's still broken. She was asked whether she has forgiven Cal Bowen. She is always asked. She always answers the same way, and she has never once dressed it up. I'm working on it, says Ozella Teague. It's slow, and I'm not going to lie about the pace.